genetics. What does that mean?
It is those formation that you have when you were giving birth to all of those things that you acquire from your father and your mother.
Was there anything that was shaping you as you were growing up as a child?
And I was shaped by my society. I was shaped by how I grew up. I was shaped by how my parents raised me and the role models that they were.
What is feminism from your perspective?
Feminism is the advocacy for equal rights.
How much do people really understand the idea of feminism? When we say equality, what really are we talking about here?
There is literally no opportunity for a woman.
Do you mean to tell me that the difference between a woman and a man is an ideology, or is it biology? Is it scientific, or is it political?
I'm a scientific researcher, a writer, and a social activist or advocate for, I'm mostly always in the midst of social discussions and social justice and social issues. Also, in the line of biotechnology, I have my master's in bioengineering, and I also have a minor rather in liberal arts. And that is why you can see me shuffling between science and art, and all of those things is just a fine-tuned blend for me. I am Nigerian, I'm from Kogi State, and I am currently in Europe where I am doing my research in gender studies. And, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm grateful for meeting you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, sister. It's a pleasure to have you here. This is really very beautiful to share. We are always learning about things, learning about what you think we already know. And of course, I think you are at the center of that now, that you are talking about research, talking about maybe looking at data and all of that. I also
Yeah.
made mention of the fact that you are okay in the science because you are a science researcher or researcher in the field of science.
Yeah.
Could you spend a bit more time there in what exactly are you researching on mostly? So maybe that can help us to understand how you got there. And then, of course, we're going to pull back a little bit and then come forward again.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
I actually did my bachelor's in Maiduguri, where I learned microbiology. And then I moved in that microbiology, I was able to specialize in genetics. And then I moved to Europe, where I did my master's in bioengineering. So I was mostly always around biotechnology. In my university, I researched on salmonella in sachet water. And then in my master's, I researched on Parkinson's disease and ion channels. And right now I'm working on sickle cell anemia, and how, we can use biotechnological tools to be able to provide, treatment for, especially accessible treatment for sickle cell anemia patients.
All right. Sister, you are a bundle of knowledge. So I'm not sure we can finish all of it today. That is what I usually do when we have issues like this to tackle, because there are a lot of things that you are into, and these things are not self-explanatory. I used to tell people, but in any case, we're not in haste. We're not in haste to conclude the conversation. I've had people here, including professor, lecturer at the university, where we have had up to 4, 5 episodes. Each of them sometimes lasted up to 3, 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, because these things are not self-explanatory. Argument related to feminism, for example, which you were just telling me about, we could really go in depth to talk about that. Argument related to genetics, for example, that is huge. That is very huge. And I think that is where we will start from. Genetics. What does that mean?
Genetics is like, will I say, a code that defines every specific humans, and it's different for everybody. Of course, we have their foundational identical elements, which is the DNA, but the sequences are mostly different for everybody. And the define you, the kind of genetics is the reason why you're probably dominant or recessive, especially in some characteristics that you show in your physical traits. There's also, genetics being responsible for how you act or how you behave or the sicknesses that goes on into your old age and even what you were born with. I think genetics is like a really important aspect of the society and breeding and offspring and all of those things that, if we want to go in deeper, we wouldn't finish today. But yeah, genetics is in relation to your DNA. It is those formation that you have when you were giving birth to all of those things that you acquire from your father and your mother, and even from the environment that sum up who you are, especially biologically. So yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Obidi. We'll come back to this question of genetics just now. Let's go back to where we usually start here, which is about you. We need to learn about you. And actually, today I was speaking in a radio. Somebody invited me to come and speak in a radio in a city next to me,
Oh wow.
Padova. He was telling me, the host was telling me, you want to learn about my story? I said, wow, that is interesting, because that is what I usually do here in my podcast. Okay. Your name really struck a chord in me when I first came across you. And it was actually in a video where you were talking about the killing that is going on in Nigeria. You see the case that happened in Oromi, where they burned down some people. Of course, this is uncommon among the Asian people. We don't usually do this to people. It is talking about the last that people can be driven to before they take a drastic action. And of course, it hasn't stopped, it's still continuing. In fact, when I was listening to your video, it also moved me too. But your name, that is what I'm talking about now, Obidi. Because in Oromi, there is a king that is very famous. He's known as Obidi. Anyway, that is how it is pronounced, Obidi. That is a G in the name.
Yeah.
Because our conjugation usually have a GB, KP, so BH, HI, KH. So, of course, that is how our words are usually formed. So, of course, when I research more about you now, I see that, okay, that is actually not the same, but of course, maybe that they might be related. So, tell me a bit about you. You are growing up in Kogi State. What do you see around yourself?
I did not grow up in Kogi State. I actually grew up in Abuja. My parents moved to Abuja in 1999, and we have lived in Abuja ever since. But according to the history, I believe that Obidi is a name given to my great grandfather, and he was the founder of that village, which we have settled, from the beginning of um, time, I would say. And he was a hunter, probably from Delta or Edo or some of those surrounding Southwest countries. We would states, I beg your pardon. We would not know where he came from because I literally have my family history here, and it was traced down to the 8th generation, I think. And here you would see Obidi gave birth to this person gave birth to this, that person gave birth to this, but they were not stated where they came from and how they got there. And so sometimes I believe that maybe my great-great-grandfather might not be Igala. He could be from Delta State or from Igbo, and he settled in Kogi State. And, he married an Igala woman, and by virtue of, your environment, you become like the people. And from years back, we are now Igala. I don't know. Or he could be Igala, and the names probably were not segregated at that time. Names were not, I want to say, partitioned to different tribes or so. Maybe at that time, Nigeria was not so much amalgamated, and people could carry other parts of other people's history. And I feel like maybe that is how we got the name. But Obidi belongs to my great-great-grandfather. It's a family name, and my actual name is Ojochide, which means God is my guide in Igala. But I prefer to go with Obidi because it's so easy to pronounce, and it just saves me the whole stress.
All right, I love that. I love that. It make it very easy, so you can easily find your way around. But it's also a good thing that your history. Is fundamentally important that we know where we are coming from, because the time will come where we are called upon to explain who we are. We don't need to just remain on the surface. We need to be able to go down on, so that that something is very peculiar about the Nigerian people, or maybe I can say within the neighborhood that we have, That when you mention your name, people can trace you to where you are coming from. It doesn't just
Exactly.
end there. Because, like I was just telling you, if I hear you say me or he, I know that that is a sound that is within our language family, no, because I don't see that anywhere, no. So if somebody say my father is or my name is Ugo Chuku, except maybe they found the name so fancy they gave it to a child, you must be from the eastern part of the country. Those are
Exactly.
the people that have this chi, things like that,
Yeah.
no? So I think they help us to know where we are coming from. We should never abandon our root because it makes us who we are in the world. That is so important.
It's our identity. Yeah.
All right. Was there anything that was shaping you as you were moving, as you were growing up as a child?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And I was shaped by my society. I was shaped by how I grew up. I was shaped by how my parents raised me and the role models that they were for me. But I think most importantly, one of the things that shaped my ideology as a feminist today was my mom being a women leader. She, would have visitors come every day, and they were mostly women, and they were complaining about their husbands. And I can tell you for free that I had so many stories as I hid behind the dining table and listened to these women speak. It shaped my life. It shaped how I understood feminism. It shaped how I began to approach the issue of feminism and to life in general for me. And also social justice in the sense that my mom was a widow. My dad died of politics earlier on in life, and my mom did not remarry. And I see her own struggles, when she tried to acquire land or she tried to move up the ladder, and so many things that, restricted her from being who she would have been really shaped me. Religion shaped me, the education shaped me, the neighborhood that I grew up shaped me, the friends that I had, the books that I read. In fact, before I was 20 years old, I had read up to 2,000 books already. And these shaped me and how I grew, most importantly, my sisters, my mother, uncles, everybody really just shaped me to be who I am today, really.
All right. Thank you so much for that. The society, that is what you are judging now to be the element that have formed you, and that is fundamentally important. I
Mhm.
think if we are paying enough attention to where we are growing up or what is influencing us, we will be able to make better sense of who we are. In that we don't just happen. Our society happened to us, and we also happen back to the society. So
Exactly.
nothing is happening in a vacuum. It is not a miracle. It is okay. By that I'm saying it's not a magic, and we can
Yeah,
actually trace to what happened to us.
exactly.
All right. I'm trying to understand the meaning of feminism. Okay, I'm leaving back the your scientific partner. Maybe we just maybe interconnect along the line.
Yeah.
Is it like a protest against masculine sort of setup? Because I hear now that as a little girl, you are hidden under the table, or you have hidden yourself under the table, and you
Okay.
hear the complaint of the women, usually again complain of the maybe the maltreatment or maybe how they are being treated by their men, and I want to believe that have influenced you. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, what is feminism from your perspective, from where you are looking at it?
Feminism is the advocacy for equal rights for both men and women. And this is a very fundamental issue in the sense that women have been sidelined, women have always been treated as second-class citizens. Women bear the most load in the society, but we like to think that it is the man that is doing the most work, from ideology to behavior to how we exist in the society. We can see that women are oppressed, and feminism is not a protest, is a fight for human rights. It is a humanity responsibility. Is one of the responsibilities as humans that we need to do to fix our society, because you are born and then you begin to study your environment, you begin to see things that are good or bad or above or below. And one of the many things that you grow up to see as a woman is that the society actually disrespects you from even being a child. You see issues like molestation of babies, or women not being allowed to go to school, or women after being after graduating, men are asking them for sexual gratifications before they can get a job. We're talking about how men, do not provide or do not provide enough and expect these women to use the little that was given to them to perform magic. It also stems from respect, between partners to education, even to how people view women, as a concept is what feminism entails. And there's so many types of feminism, including liberal, Marxist, radical, intersectional. You have ecofeminism, and there's so many different types of feminism that women practice today. And it's very, very important that we have the knowledge and we can be able to decipher which kind of feminism that people are doing. Like people that say you are an angry feminist, that's radical feminism. You don't expect women not to be angry when babies are being raped every day, women are raped every day. The society is just not in the favor of women. If we want to go deep, we can go deep. But yeah, every woman is a feminist, even if some women like to say, no, I do not want to support feminist ideologies. But in little ways that you have helped another woman or grow another woman or even grow yourself and position yourself in a better place in the society, you have contributed to feministic movements.
Yeah, thank you so much for that explanation. That is very cool.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand something. You say it's a human right, feminism. I told you before that it's the first time I'm having this argument here, and it is important that we
Oh, yeah.
have a kind of a broad explanation of that. And you also talk about our society, and of course, the people in the society, which is we, okay, those that have been before us too. So when we look at this injustice in the society, okay, it becomes also very complex now when we look at history, because history talk about what have happened before us, no? And African history sometimes is is very enticing. When we say women are mistreated in the society, in this case, we are looking at the African society. Are you looking at African society that is remodeled after the European system? Because what we have today running in many African society is actually a replicant of what is happening in the Euro-Western society, but actually the worst form of it. Because we are not really just doing what they do in the West, because you are in the West, I am in the West. We are doing the worst that they can do in the West. That is what we are doing in Africa, so that we
Yeah.
abandon ourselves. We copy the worst form of exploitation. No? Okay, I don't want to go deeper there. But what I'm saying, when you say women are mistreated, which society are you referring to? What we have today, or is it the way it have always been? This is important for me.
Now, when African women talk about feminism, it can be categorized into two, three, four. And now, important factors that affect society's culture, religion, and how do you put it again? And colonialism. And now, before colonialism came to Nigeria, Africa already practiced their own culture, right? And of course, women were segregated in old African culture, but women were not treated as second-class citizens as, the Europeans introduced to us, colonialism, quote unquote, introduced to us. Like things like sacrificing a virgin, or if your husband died, you would need to prove by drinking the water or sitting there by the coughing or the body. We also have genital mutilation that has gone on for centuries in Africa. We have child marriage, that children below 9 or 8 or are being sent to meet people that are way older than them. And all of those things happen in ancient African culture, but we just sort of did not feel like they were an issue or it was an issue until in fact it was we had warriors like Queen Amina of Zaria. We have the other Ghana lady that fought colonization, and so many women. African society did not really segregate. It gave women almost the same power that it gave men. Women were chief priests, women owned lands, women had goats, they had livestock. They made important decisions of the family. In fact, both the queen and the king almost had the same power. But when colonialism came and they introduced religion and lifestyle and a new way of, assimilating into culture and whatever, they made the man the important, aspect of the society. When colonial masters came, they did not meet with women. They met with men, and they did all the discussions with men, and women were sidelined politically. Women were sidelined in important decision making, and white people say, go home, go and communicate to your wife, go home. And anything they tell you, you cannot make any decision. It's like you are being uh you they're just reporting to you, and that is if the man respects you enough to even report to you what was discussed with the colonial masters. And then after that, and the slave trade went, they emphasized men by opening the first boys secondary school. There was no girls secondary school, and after 50 years later, girls secondary school came, and girls secondary school only taught home economics and nursing, and it was men that was doing the doctoring, the engineering, traveling outside the country. People like Obasanjo had you know the leverage to go to Paris as a young soldier to become a commander. But the first woman to drive a car was Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, and that was only what was attested to her. But she was the first person, first woman to go to school, came back and formed the SUG. If you ever have heard of SUG in Nigeria, Funmilayo Ransome Kuti was one of the founders of SUG. She created the Nigerian Feminist Forum, where she talked about the importance of education for women. And the first members were only eight, yes, because not so many women were educated. And I need you to Google when Funmilayo Ransome Kuti graduated. We're just talking about less than 100 years ago. And you can see how women have been sidelined. And then even the liberation for women has not been long ago. The ability to vote, the ability to own land, the ability to live by yourself. All of these things are even what we call digital feminism, because you have waves of feminism. You have the first wave, second wave. We're literally in the third wave, where we are discussing, digitalization and the individualism of self, which means, well, we don't want to be treated as a collective entity. One person is important and one person can fight, and we need to treat you like your story, like your case. We need to emphasize it and give you that treatment. We don't want to create a collective body. And right now you can see some of those movements online, women coming online to call out their perpetrators, where married women coming to call men of uh infidelity and many things that actually ruin the game of marriage. And that is if we're talking about marital aspect. There's also rape that women are fighting for. There's also child marriage that women are fighting for. There's education women are fighting for. There's also even understanding our body science. I've sidelined women by not understanding PCOS and how women reproductive organs work. And there are women in science fighting that. There are women in research fighting. Wherever we smell misogyny, wherever we see that women are just sidelined because of their women, it calls for, some kind of advocacy, and there are people there doing that.
Okay, so it's a human right, like you said, but it's a human right for the respect of the women to take the women gender up to the same. Because the question of gender is, oh, it's a very big conversation actually. Because now,
Yeah,
particularly outside Nigerian space, of course, that is beginning to come in now. Because okay, through NGO and government sponsored program. By that I mean many programs are coming from the Euro Western society. Because now you need free money, then you also need to get what they are getting there, no? And I repeat
exactly.
again, we are always getting the worst part of them. We don't inherit building up a society that can be equal for everybody like it is in Paris or in Rome or in London. There are corruption here too, but it appears that we like the corrupt part of it so that we can easily do the mago thing. But we can also carry their law because lawful, so that when the policeman sees somebody in front of him, you treat him as a human being. Because they treat people like human beings. He said, we have the policeman now, treating Nigerians like animal. We can, anyway, I don't want to be over pumping that, but what I'm trying to say here is that um, how much do people really understand this idea that you are talking about? Because I think that is a misconception, a very high sense of misconception about the very idea itself. Of course, you did talk of the different grade or the different type of feminism. Let's leave that apart for now. How much do people really understand the idea of feminism? Let's say whether in Nigeria or here in the West where you are.
In Nigeria, I can tell you for free that not a lot of people understand the concept of feminism. In fact, people use it as a racial slur, a sexist slur. People use it to insult women, as if you tell me that I'm a feminist, it's going to make me angry, And that is just, it kind of make you understand that most people do not understand what it means. Because if you do understand what it means, you will not call me feminist and think that it's an insult. The thing about the Europeans and the colonization that actually happened in Nigeria was that most of these Europeans that came were from privileged society. They had access to education, they had access to industrialization, they had a little bit of ease compared to Africa. And of course, I'm not saying Africa does not have their own technology. We had the Benin Wall, we have bronzes. Africa was developed before white people came. But when they came, they introduced a new culture, they introduced a lot of stuff. And it's like we have to reciprocate what they were doing. But feminism is not monolith in its entire concept. It's just like when white women are fighting, oh, we need equal pay, we need to be recognized, we need job. African women have always worked. We went to farm, we nurtured, we cared, we were doing a vocational kind of education. Men would train men and women would train women, and you become a better person in society, and then you meet with another man that was trained, and society kind of continued like that through folklore and oral stories, and African society existed in its own. But when the Bible came, or the Quran, or whatever religious book they have going on right now, it kind of rewired the African system. First, because the colonization used brutal force. They also introduce a constant system, and something that you repeatedly do will become part of you. They introduce church, go every Sunday, go during the weekend. So they had a rewiring of what African culture should be, or I would say the template we already have that was it was what we were using, but they kind of rewired it and reconstructed it, and we had issues from understanding, even mingling our culture, because culture is an essential part of an African society. We really cannot let it go. So we kind of think we can do both, or we can be committed to both, or we can mix them. There were so many things that actually restricted the fight of feminism in Africa and in Nigeria as a whole. The white man comes and introduces white wedding and tell you the man is the head. But in Europe, it worked because the man had generational wealth. He had his house in a pickle white fence. The woman really did not need to do anything. But in Nigeria, in Africa as a whole, the man contributed and the woman contributed, and there was nothing that indicated that the man had to pass on generational wealth to his family or whatever. The children farmed and they sold the farm and they ate the farm produce and they ate what the farm gave them. There was no competition of luxury. Luxury was, to me, I was even doing a research, I was telling somebody that luxury began to see mainstream media from 2000, from the year 2000, when the internet came. There was really nothing like luxury. African men would put themselves together and build somebody's house if he was maybe newly married or if his walls were broken. So there was more community than there was individualism, like we have right now. And so European culture did their best, but they also rewired us to a place where we are right now that is not really ideal.
All right, all right. The place where we are right now. Now, I want you to help me understand what might maybe be creating the confusion. When we say equality, what really are we talking about here? Are we saying that we're going to sort of exchange the role so that the men can take the role of the women, or the women can take the role of the men, or we can mix up the role? Everybody can pick up the first role, whichever one that comes in. Is that what we are talking about by sort of elevating the level of women in the society? Help me understand that.
It is more by elevation, and this elevation is coming because there was a gap between the man and the woman, and the gap was a really long stretch. But most importantly, nobody wants the role of a man, or a man should not want the role of a woman. It's equality. Equality is, you are a human being, I am a human being. What you wouldn't do to yourself, don't do to me. What you wouldn't disturb yourself about, don't disturb me about. What you basically would not allow, and your morality, your standards, your value, whatever you hold to yourself and you believe that these are my values and my standards, should also be able to be applied to somebody else. Now, issues of the society makes gender leaning laws. The gender leaning law means as you are like this, as a man, If you were not Nigerian and you married a Nigerian woman, you cannot get citizenship, right? Because Nigeria does not think that a woman is valuable enough for a man to come around, you know. We also have surname. You bear your husband's surname, even if it's the woman that takes the pregnancy and go through the severity of pain to give birth. There's also no job. In fact, if you and I we said we're going to go outside today to look for a job in Nigeria, you will mostly always find a job before I do, because you can go and do agboro, you can go and do conductor, you can load a car, you can pick blocks, you know. But as a woman, except I'm going to be hawking or selling in the market or prostituting, there is literally no opportunity for a woman, you know, in Nigeria, for a Black woman or for an African woman. On top of that, as a Black woman or an African woman or a Nigerian woman, you cannot buy lands. Before some of these were, revisited, you couldn't buy lands, you couldn't vote, you couldn't, go to school, for some religion like Muslim, you close yourself. Your husband has the ability to marry 4 wives, but you cannot. A husband has the ability to beat, you know, in some religion, they say you can beat your wife. So in so many ways than not, you can see that men have more advantages in the society. In fact, if me and you said we're going to go to a job that I was overqualified for, I am qualified for, most of the times you will be picked because a man is like an ideal, how do you say it? An ideal example of capitalism. Like capitalism wants a man. Capitalism wants a man because you're not going to be pregnant. Capitalism wants a man because you're not going to be on your period. You're not going to throw tantrums. You're not going to do any of these, you know. But we were created. Nobody know how we got here, right? And it's just like, as an able-bodied person like me, I start to hate on a disabled person and say, oh, you're not enough, or you are subjugated, or it's just the same thing that men do to women, even sexual gratification. So men think that sex is their right and that they can rape, and that they don't even want to understand consent. They don't want to understand that, they should provide. You know, you see many people having issues with provision. Before, men used to go to farm, and that was the value, you know, that we had at that time. Now we have money. Money is the value. It was not local farming or being a hunter or being a whistleblower. Whatever skill you have in the ancient African society literally brought women to your door. And it's the same thing in modern African society. We have money as the exchange commodity right now. You're not going to farm, you're not showing no skills, you are outsourcing your thing as a man. If your electricity is spoiled, you would go and outsource it. If your generator is bad, you outsource it. But when it comes to a woman, you don't want to outsource cooking. You say she must cook, she must clean, she must go to work and still come back right on time and take care of the kids. And all of this over extension that we demand from women is not society like, because we do not men do not demand this over extension from themselves, and they want to be forgiven. If a man cannot provide, he wants to be forgiven. But if a woman fails to provide sexual favors or sexual duties for her husband, or if she fails to provide marital duties for her husband, she's mostly always met with anger and disdain. And these are some of the issues that we face in feminism that we believe that.
So yeah, thank you so much for that explanation, and it's perfectly. How do I say this? You see, justice is justice. You don't need to paint it for it to be right. No, when you talk about children being molested, you don't need any other thing to understand that it is wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong. Simply wrong. No. When you talk of maybe somebody be denied right to be able to do certain thing, you don't really need any other thing to understand that it is wrong. It's simply wrong. No. Yes, but the human society is also very complex, no? Because we've been existing for several hundreds of thousands of years. Certain things have been built, no? And so we don't have any alternative yet than to keep what we have, but refine it in a way that it can suit us better. I think that is the way that society really should function.
Exactly.
So now I want to pretend that you are not telling me that by helping people to understand the importance of feminism mean that we should now send a woman to do the work of the bricklayer, and the man should stay at home to take care of the children. Is that did I get you wrong on that?
Most men like to think that what we are trying to do is exchange of roles, which in a way it might be correct, because women have also been limited, when formal educational system came. women, it did not come from women's inability to do it. It came from a repeated pattern of giving women a certain role and giving men a certain role that society just started to say, okay, women cannot do it. Because if you're going to talk about strength, you by yourself, if you went to fight a woman who is a professional boxer, she's going to beat you, right? And so it's the same thing. There are more women there. The women can beat men and men can beat women. You know, men like to emphasize strengths. Of course, it's a biological advantage that men have, but women also have strength, and they have showed this strength in many ways than not. Women can work in rigs, women can work in bricklaying. You see on your TikTok, some women plastering walls, painting. When you even come to Europe, you see women doing most of these jobs. Again, like I said, it is the overconditioning of African society that made us think that some roles are meant for some women, and some roles are meant for some men. When you come here, women paint, women fix roads, you see them, working on drill system and all of those things. Of course, you see more men because, again, patriarchy is a fundamental system in our society that places men above women. And of course, you will see them in more advantageous position than women. But this is not to say that women cannot do these roles that men are doing. In fact, women menstruate, women go to work on period, you don't know. Women do things on period, you don't know. So which other strength do you want to compare to a person that is bleeding but can show up to work and you don't even know and go back and take care of the kids and cook? And so for me, I think that for a long time, women have been lied to, by what we can do and what we cannot do. And feminism is telling women that you can do all of those things that society told you that you cannot, including education and working in the rig and traveling and being child-free or being married. Feminism at its core is allowing a woman do what she wants to do and not being faced with backlash. If you want to be a traditional housewife and love your husband and not go to work and be at home and take care of the kids, you can have that. You should not be exploited with that. And if I want to be an engineer and a professor and teach students and be a lecturer in a university, I should have that. I should be able to do that. I should not be restricted in both places. Somebody should not come and tell me that, oh, why are you going for a PhD? You were meant to the kitchen. And somebody should not tell the person in the kitchen that, why are you not working? As if staying in the house is not work enough. In the USA, it is estimated that a house job that a housewife does is equal to $80 of a cleaner's job. If a cleaner wanted to come to your house and do the same work that a woman, your wife, was doing every day, it will cost $80 to $100, because if it's so simple, why are you not at home? Why is the father not at home so that the woman can go and provide? People talk about submission, and I was telling a group of people, I said, if it's so easy to submit, why is the man not submitting and the woman allowed to do what she's supposed to do? Again, it's about power control, it's about dynamic, it's about emphasizing, power in the household. And these are some of the ideology that we are fighting for, especially in recent, feminism. Now, we're not saying exchange roles, we're saying if that is what you want to do it. As a man, if you come to your house and you see your wife tired and overwhelmed, you can go and cook. Nobody's going to beat you. You can make the bed and tell your wife, oh, baby, sleep, rest today. This over masculinity that has defined manhood and has stopped them from being emotional is the main reason why men are suffering from male epidemic today. It's not hard to love your lover, take out the trash, clean up the house. You live there too. If you were living alone, you will clean it. So why are you with somebody and then you make that their role? And it's not out of love, because somebody is saying, okay, if you're not going to do it, I said, no. When you make people do something every day, whether they are happy or they are not happy, or when it is available, when it's not available, you make it a tax. You make it a duty. And when you make it a duty, this is where you see women complaining and saying they don't have help and it is overwhelming, because making African food in itself is very tasking. From going to the market to shop for your okra or your meat or your fish and come home and start the whole process, it takes you about roughly 6 to 8 hours for you to make an African food that is palatable for your husband to say, oh, I'm happy. And so why do you think this is not working off? The people that cook on the road spend the same amount of time with the woman that is at home and is doing the job. But you pay the person outside, you acknowledge the person outside. But when it comes inside, you begin to, reinforce some kind of ideology
All right, all right.
that
Now, I've got a question for you, Obidi.
yeah.
You are a scientist. In that, at least you tell me that you do scientific research, right? And you also made mention of genetics.
Yeah.
Do you mean to tell me that the difference between a woman and a man is an ideology, or is it biology? Is it scientific, or is it political?
I think you have answered all the question, because what defines us as people is not only biology. You have the nature versus nurture argument where people put out there. It is social, it is cultural, it is psychological, it is our environment, and it is biology. Women have only X chromosome, but it might interest you to know that men have both the X and the Y chromosome, which means they have part of women in themselves too. You get what I mean? They are made of emotions. They are made of you are your mother and you are your father. You are a sum total of both of them. That's why you have the XY chromosomes. You get what I mean? And if you want to define it by biology, like what the UK Supreme Court did and said a woman is defined by, her X chromosome and that alone, it begs the question. In our society, you have different kind of genetic variation, from women that have birds to women that have a hair on their chest, to women that appear masculine, but they also possess S chromosome, like Iman Khalif of the Olympics, that people thought she was trans, but she was a woman. And in your society, you know more than one woman that is masculine presenting, that have births, especially in the Igbo society. You see them with hairs on their chest. So when you have this group of genetic variation, how do you categorize these people? All right. It means that if you're going to use the X chromosome alone, then the woman with the facial hair is part of it. The woman with the hair on her chest is part of it. Everybody is part of it. But socially, men and society have defined women as a sexy hourglass woman who is sexy and sexy is what I'm going to say, figure eight. And that is a social definition, because that is not biology. Biology includes the intersex too. If you were a woman and you had both the woman and the man organ, you were also classified as part of being a woman and also part of being a man, because you possess both of them. And so when we have this in biology, where we have different genetic variations, but the society wants to be stuck to the figure eight, it means that you are socially defining what a woman is. You are ignoring biology. And so this is where I would say a
All right.
man and a woman cannot be defined with biology alone. It's a sum total of your experience.
Okay, if according to your explanation there, which of course that is proving that the man have both S and Y chromosome, and the woman have S chromosome, and only that, no. If we look at it from biological perspective, okay, of course the man and the woman both live in the society. It's not like the society is happening only to the woman; it's happening also to the man too, no. So how, therefore, is it possible that we can give them the same task? Like maybe, what I think is that our ancestors have lived, they have a lot of experiences which they pass on to us. We didn't define the society that we have today. We did not define it, which is actually one of the importance of understanding our story, our understanding of where we are becoming from. The war didn't start with us. It didn't even start with the European. It didn't start with the evolution, with the politics that we have today. We'll be here for many, many years. So I think it is important for us to enter into the museum, for example, and look at why the Egyptian will give a representation of certain figure, that this is a woman, this is a man. We can't simply say let's change the rule, let's break everything down and let's start from the beginning again. No, we cannot do that. But if you are telling me now that a woman is mistreated, that is unjust. Any reasonable man know that it is unjust, and we must do something about that. But to say that, okay, let's mix it up, let man do what a woman can do, let woman do. Woman cannot do what a man can do, and man cannot do what a woman can do. That is what makes life worthy of living. If a man can do what a woman can do, a woman can do what a man can do, we will get confused. The roles are different. Your father's role and your mother's role are not supposed to be the same. But it doesn't mean that your father's role is the most important. No, it is not like that. The woman is not the most important. The man is not the most important. Both of them are important. They are 50-50. If that is what we are talking about, then it makes a lot of sense. But if we are saying, let's break everything down, I don't think we have the power, because this is something that is built up of hundreds of years of evolution. So this is where I have my perplexity there. Maybe you can correct me or expand on that.
Yeah, I'm going to correct you, because again, one of the fundamental problems that we have is feminism is not the exchange of roles. It's not the exchange of roles. We're not saying men get pregnant and women, pregnant men. What we are saying is that whatever decision that I choose to make, you should not say because I'm a woman. That is the reason. The society made gender-leaning laws. What are gender-leaning laws? It means that as a woman, these laws are made because you were a woman. Laws like you cannot be on your period and go to church or go to mosques, they were made fundamentally because you're a woman. No roles are being exchanged. We did not say men carry belle. In all of the feminism we'll be fighting, have you had anybody say men get pregnant? Have you had anybody say men take period? Because fundamentally, it's not in the exchange of the rules. It is the same me as a human. It is the same me as the equal and fundamental identity to you. If you can do that job and get that pay, I can do that job and get that pay. Take, for example, basketball. LeBron James and all of those people in the NBA make times 50 more than women in the WNBA. And it's the same thing everywhere in the world. An economic laureate that won a Nobel Prize award last year, I can't remember her name, also proved that women become poorer when they are married and men become richer when they are married. These are things that happen in the society. What about rape? Are we saying men don't rape kids? We as women, we want to rape kids? Again, when we are fighting the victimization that women have endured in the society, from domestic violence to being disregarded in politics to not be included in church. Like a woman, you cannot be some Orthodox church, you cannot stand on top of your pulpit and preach. Women that are Islamic women in Afghan are covering their head to toe. They are being banned not to sing in public. They are being women in Somalia, as I'm talking to you, as young as 3 years old, they use a razor to cut off your clitoris because it is assumed that you are going to be promiscuous or you are a sexual object. But we have seen time and time again that men are the sexual object. Women have been trained to accommodate a man from a young age. A woman is being told, oh, you need to respect the man, your husband. But a man is not given the same drill. A man is excused. He's allowed to play football. He's allowed to stay late. He's allowed to be drunk. He's allowed to grape. He's forgiven for the many things that women are not allowed to do or forgiving for. So mostly it is systemic oppression than it is biological exchange of roles. And I hope that we understand that.
Biological exchange of role.
Yeah, it's not a biological exchange of role. It's a systemic
Okay. I thought you said it was a biological, because I wanted to understand how we're going to do that.
Biological exchange of role is a systemic oppression we are fighting.
All right. And like I said before, I think when you're talking of oppression, when it is really understood that, because for example, when you talk about a child being molested, I want to repeat again that it should be condemnable by everybody. So yeah, of course, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense that when we are talking of, okay, when you talk about pay raise, no, that a man is doing the same work that the woman is doing, the same work, I do not support the fact that the man should be paid more than the woman. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Of course, on that we agree. But of course, there are certain things that we need to have a deeper understanding. Like, for example, we cannot give the same role of a man to a woman. That one is clear. But there are some roles that men and women can do. For example, there is a cloth that I can wear. A woman can also wear it.
Yeah.
Of course, there are some roles that men can do, women can do. But there are fundamental things that you don't just give. We don't switch role. Okay, anyway, you already made that clear.
Let me ask you, what fundamental role is, okay, what role is fundamental to a man?
All right, now I'm going to talk to you based on our history, based on our evolution. It is fundamentally the role of a man to defend the woman. It is not the role of the woman to defend the man. We don't put the woman on the door. We put the woman inside the house. The man stands in front of the door. Now, when the dead come, the man pick the dead so that the woman and the child can live. We don't want to switch that role. That role was not formed by us. It was formed by our ancestors based on hundreds of years of evolution. That if the dead come, man can pick it. We don't say, oh, now we are now feminists, we are now bigger, let us do that. Even if the woman stay on the door and the woman die, it is likely that the child will also die too. So this is fundamental role of a man, that you defend the house. Okay, the house includes also the woman, because the woman is the one that takes the generation to the next one. Therefore, we don't put the woman at the big belly to stay in the door and say, okay, I'm also strong. I can do what a man can do. Let me do this fight for my husband. It doesn't happen. We don't exchange those roles. But if we're talking of a role that maybe we are doing a menial thing, we can exchange that. We don't send the woman to go to the forest and hunt. Because you understand now that our history is based on hunting. We have been hunting for hundreds of years before we could learn how to settle down and build a society. So our history is also based on that, on the direct confrontation with white animal. Our history is based on that. We don't send women to do that kind of role where the men stay in the house to take care of what? Take care of children. The women take care of children. The men go to hunt. These are also another fundamental role. So based on that, when we begin to organize society, we need to lift heavy body because we could develop machines. This lifting of body, lifting of heavy thing, we don't send the women to go and do that job because it's too hefty for women. This we can also understand biologically speaking. So that job is also left for the men. Because men, okay, listen, I don't want to I don't want to sweet mouth my words. Men are physically stronger than women. It is natural. It is biological. But it doesn't mean that men are inferior, women are inferior. That is not what it means. We have A and B. We have the masculine energy and the feminine energy. Masculine energy is not good and feminine energy is bad. Both of them need to be for there to be word. If you are telling me that we are talking about having respect, in fact, I think I already said that one is not good, the other is bad. One is not inferior, the other one is inferior. It just simply means that this is playing a one role different from the role of the other one, and that is the way it has been for hundreds of thousands of years. And I believe it's going to be like this. But if you talk about respecting the role of the women, I agree with you 100%, more than even 100%.
Exactly, and it's not only about respecting, it's also paying women for the job that they have done and recognizing them as important parts of the society. Again, I would like to correct you when you say men are physically stronger. Of course, men possess physical strength advantage than women, but that does not mean that women do not also, possess strength. Now, the Amazon women of Dahomey were very important women that fought for their culture and their society, and they ravaged against colonization. The present-day Benin Cotonou Republic is where you will go and see the Amazon women of Dahomey. In fact, the movie called Woman King that featured what is it called again? This lady that acted How to Get Away with Murder was also a replica of what the Dahomey societies was. Let me tell you something that is very interesting. If you want to check, I'm a biologist. We can talk about how the world started, and that is on biology. When the first man started to gather, he did not gather and say, woman, stay at home. Both the man and the woman gathered, and the children gathered, and they bond, and they served until technology came. It might interest you to understand that both culture and religion and colonization were the ones that started segregation. From the olden days society, there was no culture, there was no religion, there was no society. People just moved from place to place. They were nomadic, they stayed in cave, they were gatherers, and a woman does not have to look appealing, or sexy, because African society, we did not wear clothes, there were no issues of grape, there were no issues of I'm using grape, I thought I'm in TikTok, rape, there was no issue of infidelity that we have today, of the olden days culture. You did not have so much women. In fact, before you could travel from your own village to another village to go and cheat, you know how many days you were going to spend on the road, and how many days back. So men had the responsibility to love the woman that they have loved all their life, which is almost just one woman. They nurture, they care. You understand? But the problem is when you give men roles, and the men that you said are protecting us are the ones disrespecting us and causing perpetual harm to us, that is where we complain that it is a systemic oppression. We're not saying leave your role. We're saying in the role that you gave yourself, in that role, you are not doing it enough. You are not a protector. You're supposed to protect me, but there's femicide. You're supposed to protect me, but there's rape anyway. You're supposed to protect the children, but children are being raped. You're supposed to protect the entire society, but men are going to war. The borders are loose. There is no job even for the man. You have called yourself a provider, but the same society that appointed role to you that you should be a provider is not giving you opportunity. You are not providing enough. And when you come home, you have to transfer that, you know, state to your wife. Your wife is a second-hand receiver of the consequences that you as a man go to get from the society. And however you perceive it, you will come and transfer it to your wife. And then it is a flawed system. Both capitalism, both patriarchy, both religion, both culture has affected us. And they have done more harm than good to us. And in the sense that women have faced more of this oppression because religion is always anti-women, culture is anti-women. Most of society is built against women, and we ask why.
All right, that's a good question. And it's good that we're talking about it, and we need to talk about this. That is why we are trying to trigger also the reaction of the people. It is important, but it's also important that we look at some of the fundamental principles leading to that. No, we are not able to understand everything leading to the decision of how we get to this point. Well, at least we are able to pick some point. Okay, let's look at some logical reasoning. If there is war today in any society, what is the ratio of the people that are going to survive? By merely thinking of it, more women are going to survive. Is this true or false?
I'm going to say false because women have the direct consequences of war, of climate change.
Of course, because the men are already dead. If the man is dead, they cannot survive. The women survive, therefore they suffer more. You don't send the men, you don't send the women to the war while the men are at home. You send the men to the war, like I said before, because this is an ancient culture. You send the men to the war to fight, so they die. The women remain. That is how it is be. So that the children and the women can grow up. It's obvious that the women suffer more because they are the ones that are alive. Their husbands are in the grave. They are in the grave so that the women can be alive. This is what I'm talking about.
For you to be drafted as a soldier, you were qualified, you were privileged. Let me tell you, by the main reason why they say come and fight for your country, it was from honor, it was from role, it was from responsibility, it was from value. You get me? Whether you died or not, the country, wherever you died for, will consider it a historic, will probably give you a medal, will probably compensate your family. They will probably, think about you as somebody who fought historically for the development of that country. So again, war in itself, even if men are the root cause of war, people like to argue it's women. I said, then who is the woman causing the Trump and Chinese war? Right? Trade war, I beg your pardon. Who is pushing Elon Musk? Who is the woman pushing Elon Musk to cut your social security? Who is the woman driving Tinubu? Or driving people that are, some fascist leaders that we have or some far right leaders that we have right now? Who are the women pushing them to do these things? Again, women, it's a very hot issue. And if I want to talk about this, we can spend the whole day. Aside from all of the things I've mentioned, let me finish. Women are also the first people to be blamed for whatever goes wrong with a man. Like example, it's a woman that is causing war, it's a woman. But if two countries stood up and they fought and they sent their men to fight, if psychologically or in philosophy, you want to understand why two countries are fighting, and it has been established that a community run by women is always peaceful.
I agree with you. I agree with you that if there was a time I was writing an article. That was a couple of years ago. Of course, making comparison to some country that were ruled by women. And looking at example of Liberia. Okay, not that Liberia have expanded in any significant way, but at least it was more peaceful. Though they're looking at also another country here in Europe, Germany, that was run by Angela Merkel for a considerable number of years, and it was far more organized and better than women run it. And I would say maybe in Africa we need to give room to more women. Okay, that we can also trace to biology, in the sense that women understand that they will suffer more again because their husband will die, but they will be alive. So in this, since the women suffer more, if we give them the role of leadership, we will see a different kind of leadership. So I subscribe to the idea that we should bring more women into the position of leadership, because they are really when you call a country, you hardly say a country is he. It's always she, no? Because it's a bearer,
Yeah.
it's a recipient, no? It's not one straight line. Okay, I don't want to use a word there. So, so it is important that we understand the importance of women. Nobody should downplay that. Nobody should downplay that. We are not even disputing that at all. We cannot. Anyway, thank you so much for all this sharing. I really appreciate it. And I really think it is important that we handle all this conversation. We need to talk about it.
More
Yeah.
conversation regarding feminism should really be like the way we talk about culture and religion, and which is the way we talk about feminism would have made drastic change already in our society. But I'm still so happy that we have made so much impact from technology to people like Chimamanda who commodified the idea of feminism and brought it to the street, because feminism was really Western and unreachable for a lot of people, and because I had the proximity. My dad was a professor, my mom also was a lecturer, and then there were so many books in the house, and I had the proximity to read and understand. Most women do not have the opportunity to read and even understand and digest people like Toni Morrison or Angela Davis or Sylvia Welby, or women that write fundamentally about feminism. And it is what we're doing on TikTok, and I'm so happy that even women who have more talent than these said writers like Angela Davis and all the important researchers that I've called have used their social media platform to talk about it in the more relaxed way, in relatable way, to make us understand what this feminism is. And I believe that we are making a lot of progress, that we are retrogressing. And in Nigeria, you were talking about politics. Nigeria only have 6% of women in political positions, and that is very, very alarming. The highest being Rwanda with 60% of women representing their political position. We have South Africa coming there with 47%, and other countries, that have women in the core of their leadership. Even Ghana has 10%, and you would think, the giant of Africa, as we call ourselves, will quote unquote, put women, but even the Kamala and Trump saga, you would see people say, I asked them, why did you vote for Trump? And they're like, oh yeah, he's a guy, he's going to fight immigrants. That is the only thing that they have. And I was so surprised that, we in Africa, we are intellectually downgraded. We like to downgrade ourselves intellectually. You hardly see somebody who just want to read for the sake of reading. And so it is hard to impact knowledge. It is hard for some of these fights to be able to get to grassroots in the way that we assume it to go. And this is because people like their own understanding, they like their own version of the truth, they like what they tell themselves. And even if you come at them with the truth, they are mostly always ignorant. Like, again, let me bring back the Kamala and the Trump issue. I was having a debate with somebody, and I was talking about the fact that Kamala was going to give, $25,000 to new homeowners, and she was going to give 5,000, subsidy to people who are just giving birth for the first time. She was going to, look into student loans. She was going to bring a better healthcare system that was even better than Medicaid that Obama brought. She had so many manifesto that she was going to put. She didn't promise that she was going to end the Israel slash Palestinian war, but she said, as Americans, we have the duty to support both countries, but I'm doing so much to make sure that Palestine come out as the winner. And now this was a political manifesto. She said it every day and everywhere that she went to. But Trump, on the other hand, did not have so much to offer than the migration that he was going to do, and that he was going to reduce, how do you call it again? The prices, he's going to reduce inflation. But what do we have? Time and time and time again, the most wicked people, the most oppressive people we have had in our society that have oppressed both men and women are the men. But guess what? Men will never fight off the other men. Men will never support boy children. I was speaking on my TikTok yesterday. They were saying, and men are being left behind because women are trying to bridge the gap of education. I'm like, men are going to be left behind because men want to be left behind. When you have been privileged for a long time, you think it's your right. But right now, capitalism came and took out colonialism because you will pay for your education and I will pay for my education. No boy will be sent to school for free because he's a boy. And blame that on capitalism. But it used to happen. Like, even boys that did not want to go to school were forced to go to school because it was a right. The colonialism was creating an army of workforce. They were creating an army of capitalist able bodies to come and work for them. But we did not see this, right? We thought it was a favoritism that happened to men because they had the pennies. But right now, Capitalism said no, whether you have a penis or you don't have a penis, both of you will pay me for education, you pay me for house, you pay me for everything. And so the system that is affecting both the man and the woman is the system that is affecting the man is also affecting the woman. And so the woman said, instead of me to depend on the man and the man depend on his employer, I will cut out the man and then go directly, because time and time again, men said they were the provider, they did not provide. And even if they have the money to provide, they invested in more than one family, or they cheated, or they lied, or they did not provide comfort to their own family. So men are actually in the middle between the woman and her money, right? And so education has made it so that we can eliminate the man factor there, and then the woman is connected directly to her money. And even in this money, there are laws that still segregate women. And so we need to also go to even the law and still fight it, because fundamentally the society is controlled by men. The land is owned by men. People say, oh, but as a woman, go and build your own nation where there's no man, but I have to buy the land from a man, right? And so from the beginning of the world, something happened that I did not know about that gave men fundamental power over women, and we need to address that.
All right. Yeah. Another thing that you need to also help us understand. I think I was asking you before if the entire conversation was to build up anti-men, and you said no. Okay, let me bring a hypothesis like this, because there are many feminists in town like that with the idea. Why not just take men out of the equation so that we can organize our society the way we want it without men? Is that what you subscribe to? Expand on that, whether for or against.
No. We are not saying we want to create our own society, but people have done it. If you go to, I think it's Zimbabwe right now, there's a culture, there's a village where of sexual survivors, people that their husband beat and almost killed. They all group themselves as warriors, as women, and that is why I said sometimes the lies that men tell us are just misinformation to keep us suppressed. They tell us you're not brilliant, so you can't go to school. But the ability for you to talk to me and you can hear me, this voice over, the technology behind the voiceover that you can hear me and I can hear you, is done by a woman. All right, a Black woman, by the way. And even the treatment of chemotherapy that you know is done by women. All right, your radiation therapy, radiation in itself was discovered by a woman, the element. And men don't care. Men don't read women history. Men don't watch women sport. Men don't listen to advices that come from women. There's a fundamental conditioning in the society that affects women. And if you want to say the solution is abandoning men in general and go to create our society, men will break that society and grape. Men will break that society that women have created and say, why do they create it? Take, for example, in Kirikiri prison, or which of the prison that there was a breakout in Nigeria. Men had the opportunity to run out of the prison and go look for their own freedom, and what they did instead was go to the female prison, raped all of them, and burnt it in ashes. And so these are the many reasons why women have not said we want to go and create our own kingdom. Again, there's also economical power. How many women are rich? How many wealthy women do you have? We have 2,000 billionaires in the world right now, and the women in that list are not up to 100. And so it is the same data that convinces you and not confuse you to say women have been placed as second-class citizens for a long time, from actions, from society, from religion, from culture, from how we structurally accept each other. A woman is treated far less than a man.
All right. I wish that can really change, in that we can treat each other with respect. But there is a kind of something that I'm afraid of there, kind of an idea, which is that we need to attack the men so that we can be free. But I think we need to rectify the error in the system so that we can be free, because we are together in this. Men left alone is going to perish, and women left alone, they're also going to perish. We can understand this, no? Again, we go back to biology, because this is who we really are, human being. Okay, let's pretend we are going to have women's society. Now, there will be no problem in it. Is that correct? It's not even possible. It is not possible to form a women's society, and we will. Okay, what I'm essentially saying is that even if we form a women's society, only women, there is still going to be a problem.
And that problem will not be murder, it will not be femicide. It will interest you to know that the numbers in prison, men versus women in America, I'm going to use an American data because, of course, I'm using that for my research. As I'm talking to you now, all right, more than 10 million men are incarcerated in prison. And as I'm talking to you now, less than 1 million women are in prison. All right. And if you ask the men what were the crimes that brought them to prison, most of the times they are repeated crimes. When I say repeated crimes, I'm talking of dangerous, actual dangerous crimes. And I'm not saying women are not murderers and whatever. If you go to the female prison, there is no research that has not been done, by the way. If you go to the women prison, you will discover that most of these women are new crime committers. They did not have a repeating offense, all right? And then most of them who took out their husband or took out a rapist, most of them had a justified reason why they did what they did. And now nobody is saying that any society can be free or devoid of crime. And that would be over-exaggerated and blatantly lying, and it would be a fallacy of the truth. But the thing is, the amount of crime will not be as compared to what is oozing from the men's world.
All right, I have the question like this. Let me put it like this. Do you think men living with women, there can be a solution where the men can treat their women better and their women can? Okay, I didn't really hear anything from you that the women have done or are doing against the men. Okay, let pretend that is the case. Let pretend that is the case. Do you think it is possible that in a society, men and women are living together, there can be peace? Both of them can respect each other. Do you think that is possible, or the only solution is to break up?
No, the only solution is not to break up. In fact, all the things that feminism have been clamoring for is that we want to live with you in peace. That is all women have been clamoring for. Living with you in peace means I should be respected, I should be treated as equal. You as a man should be understanding. All right. That is all feminism has been asking for. We're not saying exchange roles. We're not saying we want to be a man. We're not saying come and take breast and give us pennies. That is not what we're saying. We're saying when you come home from work, there should be some level of respect. There should be some level of emotional intelligence. There should be provision. There should be protection. You understand? Ideally, a patriarchal structure created by a man is not for the woman to work. But from the beginning of time till today, women have worked. It's like a man makes more as a farmer than a woman makes as a farmer. These things exist in our society, and we're saying these are systemic oppressions. Again, it is focused on systemic oppression than it is biology. All right. It is not okay. Let me use this for example. What
Now, I want us to look at what can be the possible solution. Now, looking at everything that have happened, okay, we have this challenge that we live in family. We sometimes we are not able to talk to each other, but we never go say, "Hey, let's kill ourselves," no, because we know as human being, again, going back to biology, if we eliminate the men, then the women also eliminate themselves. For us to be able to live, we need each other. So, how do we find a solution? What is the strategy? What are the, let's say, point A, point B, point 3 that need to be done so that we can find a workable solution for both of us?
Thank you so much. This is very fundamental because in my book, I was able to address this issue, and I'm going to say it again. Number one is remove the umbrella of privilege that a boy has, which include, playing with a game. It's fundamental from your formative years. Men are already giving preference. You say, no, you shouldn't go to the kitchen. The woman should cook. A woman will serve. And then you will see the wife or the mother telling, is that how you're going to serve your husband? Is that how you're going to do this? Is that going to... So from our formative years as children, roles have been assigned to us. Even in the church, you go, they preach about virgin. Nobody talks to the man whether he should be a virgin before he marries, but it's fundamental. If I'm going to keep myself holy, you should keep yourself holy also. There's also the preaching of marriages that church have these days is always targeted to the women. Even if you go to church, women are the most committed in church, even if they are the most oppressed. And it begs the question, how did we get to this position and what we're doing? And the simple solution is from the upbringing. What is the fundamentally wrong issue here? I emphasize that men should be given the same training that a woman is giving. If a man, as you did like this now, you can cook. When you're hungry and you come back from work and there's no woman by your side, You do not go to look for a woman. If you're hungry, you look for food. That is what you do. But African society has made it seem like a man should be excused for not knowing how to cook because somehow a woman will do that for him. Also, he's excused for not cleaning, for not knowing how to fold his clothes, for all these things that are important for organizational skill as you grow up. It's not even about upbringing or not upbringing. How are you a human being and you cannot cook, you cannot shower, you cannot take care of your immediate surrounding, and you cannot take care of the person that you said that you love? Men are allowed to play football. Men are allowed to roam around. Men are allowed to be thugs. Men are allowed to be the many things that women cannot be, especially from the formative years. A boy will play football till 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Nobody tells him what to do. In fact, you will see an uncle introducing a boy to alcohol, and telling him drink. That's how you become a man. They suppress a man's emotion that as he's growing up, even if he's crying, they say, why are you crying? But he's fundamentally emotional. And that is why there was even a relationship that I had one time. I noticed that whenever I'm with this guy in public, he's always mean. He does not show love because his boys are there. And again, I started to notice that men do many things for the validation of other men than for women. Men really like other men. Men really do things for the approval of other men. Men really do things for men to validate them. And women are just an accessory to that validation for men to say, oh, your wife fine. Remember. I want to talk about that today. But again, men see women as sexual, as sensory, or like a continuation of a generational, whatever they have going on in their head before they marry. Men do not essentially see women as the people that they want to love, to grow with, to build business with. Men buy properties and hide it. Men buy properties and put it in their name. There is something that does not speak of partnership when it comes to how both men and women are raised. Our society elevates the man and reduces the woman. So fundamentally, we need to talk about how we were raised. If we can talk about how we were raised, we can address some of this issue, which means both a man and a woman are equal. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. Both of you can compete in sports. Both of you can compete in academics. Both of you can preach in church if you want to. Both of you can play football if you want to. You as a man, even if you're not menstruating, you should know about women's period. You should know how to fix a pad on a pant. You should know what is, heat pad, how to help a woman when she's really in a cramp. It's just normal thing that you do if you want to coexist with the people that you believe should like you. You are not liking these people, but you are forcing these people to like you. As a woman now, if I come and tell you that I don't want to marry a short man, a lot of people will hate me. But a woman cannot marry a tall woman. Is it not the same thing we are saying? I don't want to marry a short man. A man don't want to marry a tall woman. But they're going to hate me for saying I want a short man. If I bought a car, society will say, you don't want women to marry you. As I have many degrees now, they say, marry you. If you don't marry, they don't go. So there's so many things that we can talk about from today to tomorrow that society has placed on gender that does not make sense. And so there's something called the rewiring. We need to relearn to unlearn, especially more women know about feminism. Now, I was telling people, I said, again, it is important that we're empowering women and we're helping the girl child. Men should do that. When did you go to a secondary school to tell boys, I want to donate free boxers to you people and teach you about consent? When did any man said I was going to go to the street and barb boys' heads and teach them about education? Meet a man today, ask him, do you want to go to school? He's going to say no, because of course he want to do Yahoo or he wants to be a scammer. A man does not really place importance to the value of the society like we think he does, because it's excusable. It can be a deadbeat father and walk away. Society gives him, that leverage. He can have 10 kids in 1 year. Society gives him that leverage. But for me, that they're going to call me a cheat, a man will call me a cheat, but it is me that cannot be pregnant more than once in a year. You understand? I must give birth to that baby. I must nurture that baby. My body must come back before I can cheat again. But guess what? A woman is treated with cruelty if she cheat, but a man should be forgiven. And now, there's so many things that we can talk and talk and talk, but the fundamental core here is there needs to be a rewiring. It is men that should learn more of feminism than women, in general, because men are the ones that need to be rewired. They are the ones that need to understand the new protocol that women are demanding for and saying, if you don't understand it, whatever I am demanding for becomes too ambiguous for you. And then you will resort to insult, and then you resort to demeaning me. And it's the same point that you are proving. You would
All right.
never not understand. You will not choose to understand. You will rather, subjugate.
All right. Now you'll be preaching this important message for a long time, right? What
Feedback
do
I
you
get from
hear? What do you hear men tell you in reaction to what you are telling them about feminism?
exactly. Again, it is not an easy fight. Most of the times I've been called hateful words, bitter feminist, go marry, you are ugly, many, many things that men do, and it stems from the place of ignorance. What you don't understand, you would abuse. And the right attitude for what you don't understand is to question, right? If you ask me a question that I did not know, or maybe I was somewhere and there was a question that was thrown around, the first thing I want to use is use my AI, or I want to use my Google or whatever research tool that I have in my phone, or whatever tool that is handy to me. I want to use it to know what that means. But what we have right now is you engage on a feministic argument with a guy. He does not know, he does not want to know, he feels like it's a gender battle, and that him as a male needs to win this battle for his brotherhood or not. I don't know. And that is why you see that men defend strangers they don't know online. A girl could be raped today and come online to share her story, but many men will defend a man that they don't know. They are not even there, but they have this inherent need to be defensive. A man is born defensive for his culture, he's born defensive for his race, he's born defensive for his gender. It is something that is ingrained in them, and it can be even explained biologically, because you can pick traits of your environment that can rewire into your genetic code, and you can give birth to offspring that you might not be biologically identical, but you can be environmentally identical. We had that experiment from the cherry blossom flower, where some rats were introduced to cherry blossom and some rats were not introduced to cherry blossom. Both of these rats were pregnant. The cherry blossom had a very beautiful scent. The rats that were introduced to cherry blossom flower gave birth to their kids, and their kids were able to smell the cherry blossom flower. But the other pregnant rats that were in the same cherry blossom flower, but what they did was that they introduced a shocker to the cherry blossom flower. Whenever this other one that was pregnant wanted to smell the cherry, they would shock the rat, so the rats would not smell it. And when it gave birth to its own offspring, they took the offspring, they did not shock the offspring, they took them into the lab with cherry flowers, and the offspring could not smell the cherry flowers because it was just not in their ability. So shock trauma can be transferred to your offspring, and you can give birth to an offspring who is not even genetically identical to you, but they could be identical to you by your environment and what you took from your environment. And so that is a very important issue that Lamarck theory explains in biology. But if we want to, talk to men, and we want men to understand, and they must have an open heart. If you already have a tight heart, and I'm coming to talk to you about feminism, and you're already triggered, you are not a rapist. Have you raped someone? Have you oppressed someone? Do you have a fundamental knowledge? Why do you feel triggered when we take data from everywhere to support? Men always feel like we're talking to them directly when we're talking about things that have affected us. Of course, it's also to you directly, because passively or not, you also uphold some harmful doctrines of patriarchy, some harmful doctrines of misogyny that you could directly or indirectly impose, and you might not know. And so I feel like men who argue with feminists should have an open heart to learn. They should be able to ask for research, and say, okay, do you have the data that back up this, and should be able to understand from the environment. A lot of men grew up with mothers that worked so hard for them. I've not had any man open his mouth to say, I grew up with a stay-at-home mother who never did anything. Most of you love your mothers, and you hold your mothers dear to you because you know the sacrifices that these women provided for you, even in a segregated, oppressive society.
All right,
And so,
let's talk about that love of a mother, and let's look at this human being, this man, which is the subject of your inquiry. Do you think this men that you are referring to love their mother, and therefore there might be a probability that they can also love the women in their lives?
exactly. That is why I think men crave their mothers. You see a man saying, "You women are not like our mothers these days," blah blah blah. Because what you're really looking for is that you want a woman to take the same oppression that your father took, that your mother took in the hands of your father. You want a woman that is okay with poverty. You want a woman that is okay with dirt, with not going to school. It shows. If I see a man that don't like any of these things, that say I'm looking for my mother or whatever, I just say, I just tell them, you crave oppression. That's what you crave. You cannot compare the society of today and the society of our mothers. Our mothers were privileged to go to school. My mother told me that she had to run. She was running to the school every day. Now they saw you enter class because you're always coming. It was a privilege for women to school, but today is a fundamental right that women can go to school. So you cannot say that. Come again with that question. I think I lost my
All right, it's
mind.
okay. I will put the question in a different way because
Okay,
you actually already responded to the first part, but I'm going to put the question in two parts. I'm going to break it open. What
please.
if you see somebody who is always say he loves his father, he doesn't love his mother? Maybe he say all bad things about his mother. How would that sound to you in your feminism approach?
I mean, my first instinct is to support every woman, but again, the society is not devoid of evil people. The society is evil and it's not determined on gender. Both man and woman are capable of committing evil to certain degrees. And I don't know the childhood experience of that person and how that person was raised, if they were raised by a toxic mother or if they were raised by a toxic father. But one thing I would do is to fundamentally say that I will understand how these people were raised and who was to be blamed. But the issue is that
But
most
wait. An important point there. Now, when you see a child or a man who say bad thing about his mother, you don't want to jump into conclusion. You want to first understand what have happened. But when you see, when you
yeah,
say, when you hear a saying a good thing about the mother, you say because the mother have been infested with poverty or things like that. I want you to explain that part.
and this is because it takes a very longer time for a woman to choose to abandon a baby than a man. You can tell a man you're pregnant today and the man is on his way. He doesn't care. But if a woman chooses to keep a baby, she did not abort it. She kept that baby. She, quote unquote, was going to invest in that relationship. You understand what I mean? And that is why if somebody can keep you for 9 months, they had some kind of love for you, right? And then when they gave birth to you, they did not, probably they abandoned you, or they threw you away, or they gave it to your grandmother, or this and that and that. It still boils down to the fact that men can walk away and are excused. But if a woman tries to walk away, she is being, treated as bad. Even seeing that 9 months alone invested in bringing a child to the world should even be awarded, including the sacrifices that was laid down in the labor house. A man does not need to pay any sacrifice, and that is why it is important for me to understand where that person is coming from. For a man, it is very easy because statistically, a man will leave his partner when they have cancer. A man will leave his partner when they're old. A man literally just want to leave. He's not married for love, he's married for duty and for what that person is doing for them. And whenever they are tired of that, they mostly always leave. You have less than 1% of people that are happily married. And it is because of statistics that made me approach the issues that way. What did your mother do? Where did your mother go? How did it happen? Because society has mostly always placed emphasis of nurturing on women. So you will never see a woman abandoning a baby, or we have very less statistics of women abandoning their babies than a man will leave, than we have deadbeat fathers.
All right. Thank you so much for your explanation. Of course, there are other things that we could have handled, but of course, we're not going to stay here forever. Maybe that would mean another excuse for you to be here again next time. So
So
I really thank you so much for your time. So what would be your final thought here to conclude this conversation? And how can people find you, those who want to learn more about your work?
Oh yeah, I'm a feminist and I'm a social activist. I would mostly talk about things that affect the society and affect women in general. You can buy my book on lulu.com. I figured everything out is a template that covers mostly everything about feminism that I understand. And that's why I said I figured everything out. It's like mostly the things that I figured out from both men and women and what should be done to, put us back to where we were. Also, you can find me on TikTok, Obidi Ojochide. You can find me on Instagram, Obidi underscore O. On Facebook, it's the same thing, but mostly Facebook and TikTok are, or TikTok is where I have like a really big audience where I really share about feminism and I have women following me. And so you can join my TikTok. It's my full name, Obidi Ojochide. I also do a webinar. My YouTube is a struggling YouTube, but you can always check courses that I taught an Afro webinar course last 2 months, and the snippets of the classes are on my YouTube. You can see if you like it, then you can buy a course from me. If you want me to mentor you, I can mentor you as an upcoming feminist or even somebody who is trying to get more knowledge about feminism. And if you want to mentor me, I'm also available to be mentored. You can write me on my email, or if you want to collaborate, or you want to reach out to me for projects, for pop-up, for book clubs, whatever event that you want to reach out to me that is within my jurisdiction, you can use my email. It's right there on my TikTok. You can use the contact, and then you will get it. And so I hope that we can meet and we can discuss how we can make the world a better place.
Lovely. That is always the mission, to leave it better than we met it. That is a good one. Thank you so much, Obidi. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. I'm happy that you have me talk so much about what I love.